Okay, let's hope this works out better than last week. Had a little bit of issues last week. Hopefully today will be better. All right, good morning, y'all. Listen that over My Philippine Dreams, N to the E to the D over at MPD. Coming at you from the city of gentle people, Dumaguete City, Negros Oriental, the Philippines. Today is Wednesday, September 20th, 2017, the first day of the rest of our lives. Yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That's why it's called the present. Let me check the live cast, make sure this is actually transmitting. Looks like it's kind of working. Cool. Welcome to the Philippine Dreams weekly live cast, where I regularly attempt to address issues that could affect foreigners living, studying, working, retiring, or doing basically anything in the Philippines. I'll talk about the good, the bad, and the occasional downright ugly of day-to-day life in our humble little archipelago. And thanks to Tom for correcting me on archipelago. Remember that all the information presented in this live stream is just that. It's objective information taken from international media sources wherever possible. I have tried to corroborate the provided news with other sources. Also note that I am not expressing my opinion on these issues, merely presenting the facts. What I try to do is, again, to try to present the objective facts and have the audience who is intelligent and possessed of good cognitive faculties to make their own conclusion out of it. The live stream comment section is open. Ask questions, goof around, but just try to keep it respectful. If you're going to be a dickweed, you're probably going to get pulled, as in banned, as in come back next time with another anonymous username. This week I'll be talking about the major shakeup in the Philippines National Police and the National Capital Region, and continued strife between the President of the Philippines and the head of the Commission on Human Rights. There's been a little bit of drama going on there if you follow my Facebook. And the Facebook is down in the video description box. You know what I'm talking about. But first, this week's corporate sponsor. I had a problem with last week's corporate sponsor because the live stream was so bad. This week's returning corporate sponsor is Thin and Cheap Chinese Towels. Featured in such high-end local outlets as Unitop and Tops and Bottoms, cheap and thin Chinese towels take the mildew out of the Philippines' mildew season by providing colorful, quick-drying, after-shower or swim delights. Meticulously fabricated by 100% organic and locally sourced, exfoliated Chinese children, cheap Chinese towels provide an ideal alternative to the thick and slow-drying, luxurious towels that you get in the West. Cheap and thin Chinese towels, get yours today. And I seriously actually suggest this. Don't bring over any of those thick terry cloth, luxurious Western towels when you come to the Philippines. Just get some of these real cheap, thin ones. They're like $3, and they dry very quickly. Let me make sure this is still working. Angel's out there chasing rats. Outstanding, Angel. YouTube. Continuing issues with YouTube. For some reason, YouTube doesn't seem to like my live casts, and they've basically demonetized every single one that I've done. One of the purposes behind this broadcast is to talk about, or at least acknowledge, some of the uglier things that are going on in our humble little archipelago. Despite the demonetization, I will probably try to continue with this format as I believe that showing both the good and the bad of the Philippines are equally important. Which brings me to Patreon. Believe it or not, yes, it's e-begging time. Believe it or not, the work I do on YouTube and my website is actual work, a good deal of work. It takes these live casts actually, and they're all demonetized. These take hours because it's about 1,700 to 2,000 words of content, and it takes quite a while. If you found what I'm doing, what I continue to do to be of some value, consider supporting the ongoing efforts on my Patreon site, which you can find at www.patreon.com/Philippine Dreams. The link is in the video description box. And continue thanks once again to everyone who has supported this site. It is sincerely appreciated. Open channel and website. Philippine Dreams is now an open channel. If you're a smaller channel and are looking for free promotion, shoot me an email at myphilippinedreams@gmail.com. This applies to both foreigners living in the Philippines and native Filipinos. If you are a musician, part of a dance crew, possessed of beautiful travel vlogs, knowledgeable on Filipino culture, traditions, and mythology, an avid scuba diver or snorkeler, or just about anything and everything to do with the Philippines, this offer is for you. Same applies to my website. If you want to do a guest article on something relating to your experiences in the Philippines, just let me know. I'm really looking for something like that. People's particular experiences, whether they be good, bad, indifferent, some of the things that they've noticed about the culture and how the differences between the two worlds. I'd really like to see something like that. So again, just shoot me an email at myphilippinedreams@gmail.com. In short, Philippine Dreams is no longer my channel, it's our channel. It's all inclusive. Note that I will have the final say on what does and does not get posted. I got to try to maintain some semblance of quality. Checking the live stream. Yeah, somebody might have complained to YouTube about the live cast. I'm not sure. But also, I mean, we talk about EJKs, extrajudicial killings, that type of things that's going on. So advertisers aren't too crazy about people talking about that stuff. So I can understand that. Which brings us to our first little tidbit pulled out of the news, and this is coming from all international sources, local and outside the country. The entire Caloocan City Police Force has basically been fired, or is in the process of being fired. Caloocan is a city in the National Capital Region. I think there's 16 cities that comprise the NCR, and Caloocan's pretty big. It's one of the bigger ones. I think it's like 4th or 5th biggest. The Caloocan City Police Force was recently fired following the questionable killings of 3 teenagers, and released CCTV footage showing some of the police force robbing a house during a drug raid. The 1,200, that's 1,200 affected police officers will be relieved of duty in batches and will receive 45 days of retraining, after which they will be reassigned to other police units. The 3 teenagers killed include Kian de los Santos, who was 17. We've talked about that in the previous live casts. Carl Angelo Arnaiz, who was 19 years old, and Reynaldo de Guzman, who was 14 years old. Now, Arnaiz and Guzman were allegedly killed around the same time. The Philippines Department of Justice started an investigation into the De Los Santos slaying weeks ago, and the parents of Arnaiz and de Guzman have also filed murder, evidence planting, and torture charges against 2 police officers in Caloocan. The death of De Los Santos, under very questionable circumstances, was followed shortly afterwards by the killing of Arnaiz. Police testimony noted that the former University of the Philippines student was shot during an exchange of gunfire after he allegedly robbed a taxi driver. That testimony was later refuted by a government forensic specialist who noted that Arnaiz was apparently handcuffed, tortured, and then shot 5 times. According to his parents, Arnaiz had left his home with the younger de Guzman, again age 14, to purchase some snacks. They never returned home. Arnaiz's body was found in a city morgue 10 days later. De Guzman's body was discovered a short time after that, floating in a creek north of Manila. The teen's body was perforated with 28 stab wounds, and his head was wrapped in packing tape. Again, we also noted that the CCTV footage taken a few weeks back also caught 13 Caloocan police officers, apparently robbing a house during a drug raid. In related news, a police officer from Manila allegedly shot one of the soon-to-be-fired officers of the Caloocan City Police Force after an argument ensued over a toothpick in a local eatery. The Manila police officer apparently got into an argument over a toothpick with a civilian patron at the local eatery. The civilian apparently left the resto and returned later in the company of a Caloocan police officer. The police officer from Manila apparently pulled his gun and fired at the civilian, but accidentally hit the police officer from Caloocan. The injured officer is now recovering from his gunshot wounds, while a manhunt is on for the police officer from Manila. All right, so that's the latest going-ons in the Philippines. These are some pretty significant events that are going on. They are obviously trying to correct it. They are obviously putting effort into this as they are basically getting rid of the police force or firing the police force, re-educating them, retraining them, 45 days of retraining, and then they're going to be reassigned. So they're not letting this just go by. They're not letting this go water under the bridge. They're actually taking some efforts to rectify this situation. This has been all over the international news, so this is not, new to a lot of people. And it's just some scary stuff. Balikbayan Box update. I've got a number of messages from people who are sending boxes that now say the process of the paperwork is very convoluted, it's very complicated, it's very laborious. You got to list out literally every single item and the estimated value of that item. For people receiving the Balikbayan boxes, I have not heard news of anybody being billed for that over 10,000 pesos. If the box is valued at over 10,000 pesos, you got to pay the tariffs and the fees. I haven't heard of that yet. But you never know. And also, LBC and Forex are telling everybody about that policy, that if the value of the box is over 10,000 pesos, they could be liable for the taxes and the tariffs at the other end when it's received in the Philippines. Let's go to the comment section real quick. Catabatic says no budget for body cams for PNP. I know the Commission of Human Rights has requested that. I think President Duterte said, yeah, you can take that out of your own budget. And then they gave them 1,000 pesos for their yearly budget. I'm not sure. Moving to Pahol next March or April. Outstanding. All right, moving on. We're going to get through this. We're going to do this, people. It's going to be a collaborative effort. Related to the latest goings on President Duterte to the head of the Commission on Human Rights, are you a pedophile? The president of the Philippines apparently teased Chito Gascon, who's the head of the Philippines Commission on Human Rights, this past week, asking him if he was a pedophile. The question issued by the firebrand president is a result of Gascon's objections to the recent killings of 3 teenagers in Caloocan, allegedly by members of the city's police force, which is now being fired en masse. As to the comments on Gascon, Duterte publicly asked, why is this guy so pre-suffocated with the issue of young people, especially boys? Are you a pedophile? Later he continued, why are you smitten with teenagers? I'm having my doubts. Are you gay or pedophile? President Duterte has long had issues with Gascon and the Commission for Human Rights since taking office, with the Commission strongly objected to the thousands of Filipino citizens who have died during the nation's war against drugs. The president has also stated that he believes that Gascon is a spokesman for the opposition to his policies and continued scrutiny of aggressive anti-drug activities conducted by the Philippines National Police. The president went on to say, why can't you move on to other issues that are besetting this country? And basically he's referring to a lot of the other issues that have been going on, including the problems down in Mindanao with the war in Mawari. The actual spokeswoman for the Commission on Human Rights said of President Duterte's comments, these are remarks that do not show respect for the dignity of others. The public must understand that the death of children concerns us all, as they are especially vulnerable and need state protection. All right, so if you thought Donald Trump was tough with his tweets, he's got nothing on President Duterte. Donald Trump could learn a lot from President Duterte when it comes to beating down political opponents. Let me just say this. I know nothing, absolutely nothing about Philippines politics. I don't know who's corrupt, who's not corrupt, who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. There are definitely sides, just like in America, there's a culture war going down. You got 2 basic sides. In the Philippines, you got everybody's taking sides, and they're very sensitive about it. So hopefully these types of situations can be addressed. I encourage everybody to do their own research. I also wrote about an issue that recently happened in Dumaguete, the city of gentle people here, in my last posting over on my website, where 2 young women were gunned down execution style by tandem bike riders right here on Mesiano Road, and this was like 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning on a Saturday, and Mesiano Road is where Foundation University is located. So these two young women who were supposed to, allegedly associated with a credit card scam that went on. And I guess what happened was during Sandurat Festival, a whole bunch of people came down from Manila and they were using credit cards and false IDs and all this stuff, and they were scamming all kinds of local businesses. And a bunch of them got arrested, and these two young women were allegedly visiting these detained individuals at the PNP headquarters here in Dumaguete. They then got on a trike and were going to Jollibee, where they got pulled over by the tandem riding bikers, who then shot and killed both of them. All right. And finally, in related news to all of this, tomorrow, September 21st, 2017, anti-Duterte protests are planned this week for September 21st, which just happens to be the 45th anniversary of the start of martial law under the Marcos regime. This past Friday, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana warned the citizens of the Philippines that the president may expand martial law nationally if the upcoming protests against his rule become overly disruptive or violent. So they got it coming from all directions. They got the insurgency going on down in Mindanao, which is continuing. According to the government, the Philippines government, it's in its final stages. Allegedly, they're doing mopping up operations down there. But again, this is an insurgency in a jungle area, and an area that has long, for centuries, seek to have its own basic a caliphate, I guess you'd call it. They're self-describing themselves as ISIS, and they also have fighters from other areas, including Indonesia, coming to help them fight against the government. So they got that going on. They got this war against drugs going on. You got the definite causal link between drugs and violent crime and nonviolent crime. It's a big problem here in the Philippines. They're trying to address it. And how it affects tourists, how it affects tourism. Government statistics, again, from the Department of Tourism, note that tourism is actually up, despite the violence, despite the shootings, despite the insurgency down in Mindanao. People are still coming. And most of them are coming from China, and they're coming from Korea. Most of the foreigners in the Philippines are actually Asian. A lot of times we assume that the only time someone's a foreigner here in the Philippines is when we see another white person. But most people are from Asia, most people, China and South Korea particularly, and also Japan. Going to the comment section. I look like a mercenary, dude. Yeah, and I hope it works out too. And again, these live casts, I do talk about some of the bad things that are going on, but 95% of the things, 97% of the things here, I've documented how beautiful this country is. I've documented how nice the people are. I've documented the low cost of living, the easy living that you can have here if you can adjust to certain things. So I talk a lot and I concentrate a lot on the good. And I got over 500 videos up. I think maybe close to 600. So, but I got to present the bad with the good, so that again, people can take in the information and come to their own conclusions. Raymond, okay, now this is Raymond, and he says the media overblows the violence. That could be true. I don't know enough about it to comment on that. I do know that a lot of the President Duterte supporters do not like Rappler. They don't like Rappler.com in particular, and they also don't like a lot of the other mainstream news organizations that they see as painting President Duterte in a negative light. So again, people are taking sides. They're not trusting the media. People have different motivations for the things that they show and present, and you got to keep that in context as well. And what disturbs me, and this is something that really bothers me. All right, let's talk about this real quick. When I put up, Dumaguete, again, has been experiencing a bit of a surge in violence. And this has been most noticeable over the past month. There's actually a Facebook page here, Hulagawai, which I recommend everybody check out. You can just type in Hulagawai, that reports on a lot of the issues that are going on that the Negros Chronicle and some of the local papers usually won't cover. They also include graphic footage. People go right up to the bodies, they take the photos. There's been a lot of robberies, and there's been a good number of murders recently. About a year and a half ago, I actually rode by the body of a guy who was shot and killed in Darrow, right on the sidewalk, right in front of a barbershop there. And it was alleged that he was selling drugs, that he had been warned repeatedly not to sell drugs, and that he was taken out. There was also a situation not too long ago, close to where I live, where there was a drug dealer at a gas station. Some, I guess, off-duty Dumaguete police officers approached him. They weren't in uniform, and he tried to escape. There was gunshots fired and all that stuff. They were later reprimanded. I think they were like police officers in training or something. EJKs, extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. Usually, the technical term for EJK, an extrajudicial killing, is usually a government agent who is operating outside the sphere of his authority, taking the law into his own hands without due process, without the courts being involved, without a trial and all that, and just killing the guy. Here in the Philippines, it includes government forces and non-government forces. And here in Dumaguete, there's actually some interesting reading. If you type in Dumaguete equalizers, extrajudicial killings, you'll see some information back from 2006, 2007. There was a guy that actually had a blog that was documenting a lot of that. And basically what it is the police can't cover everything. The police force, for whatever reason, they don't have the resources, they don't have the manpower, and neighborhoods and communities get angry with the things that are going on in the community. People here know what's going on in the neighborhood. The chismes, everybody knows what's going on. So what they do is they go up to the person, they say, hey, listen, you got to stop selling drugs, you got to stop doing X, Y, or Z, robbing people, burglarizing houses, or we're going to take the law into our own hands. And at one point, the Dumaguete City Council even had, I guess people were accusing the City Council of being involved in this or supporting this or condoning this. And the City Council actually came out in the Negros Chronicle, I believe, and said, listen, we got nothing to do with this. We don't know anything about it. So this has been going on for a long time. They refer to it as salvage, and I believe it comes from sabaje or salvaje, and it's basically, again, taking the law into your own hands. A lot of when also salvage can be this: if a family member gets killed or murdered by another family or something, the families here will sometimes take revenge against that family directly. That's also salvage. So extrajudicial killings in the Philippines is a big thing. It's not just government agents acting outside their authority and their jurisdiction to deal with criminal elements. It's also vigilantes. It's also civilians. It's also whoever it may be. And basically, and for foreigners, and this is my belief, and hopefully it doesn't come to bite me in the ass, but basically for us, if you're not involved in drugs, not involved in like illicit prostitution or any kind of craziness or insanity, if you're not in those areas, if you're not associating with those people, you're typically not going to have an issue. It's like I lived in Boston, and I lived in a really rough area. I lived in the murder capital of Boston. The area of Boston I lived in was where everybody was killed. I lived there for years. I never had issues because I wasn't buying crack. I wasn't selling crack. I wasn't smoking crack. And I wasn't associating people that were doing the same. So for the most part, we're not going to have issues, and this isn't going to affect us. As far as, and again, I started to say this before and I lost my train of thought, went off the rails. The concern I have is people that are condoning this publicly. Like in the Hulagawai post, when they posted about those two young women being killed, there was a bunch of people that were, giving it thumbs up and the big smiley faces and all that stuff, and they were ecstatic and they were supportive of this. And somebody publicly shamed them by posting, all the people that had liked it. You can go to the like section and show who liked it. And those people all went back and unliked it or deleted their posts. And also, on some forums, I've noted that People were saying, well, these women were associated with these scammers. They might have been scammers themselves, and they got what they deserved. I don't think anybody deserves to be shot down in the middle of the day on a university avenue in front of all kinds of witnesses and all kinds of other people for not only white-collar crimes like credit card scams, but even for being suspected of selling drugs and all that stuff. But again, there's sides being drawn. And this is like something that's going on all around the world. This is like an international thing that's taken off and given a life of its own. These culture wars that are going on within these individual nations. And you really see it. You really, really see it in the United States. It's not even about supporting individual political policies anymore. It's just about identifying with certain teams and saying, okay, these guys have the similar values and the similar mindset that I have, so I'm with them. And whatever the opposition says, I'm not going to care. I'm going to seek to discredit. I'm going to call it fake news. I'm going to call it mainstream media and all that stuff. And all sides are guilty of this. Going to the comments. Dun, dun. Yeah, Mike Lavelle noted the call center girl got robbed and stabbed. Yeah, there's been a number of robberies lately in Dumaguete, and even like the locals are getting sick of it. And everybody's noticing it. Again, everybody knows everybody in this town. It's a small city. It's only like 130, 140,000 people. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody sees it because you drive right by it. When there's a shooting here, it takes them a long time to investigate the scene, so they mark it off with the police tape, and you just got piles of people all around the scene taking videos, taking photos, and the information is going out immediately on Facebook, social media, and all that. Yeah, Raymond notes that the two women had just visited their gangster friends in the Dumaguete jail and were assassinated. Also, they found out that the assailants, the guys that murdered these two women, took some bags off of them. And I guess at the jail there had been some discussion about bail. And I guess bail was like set at 16,000 pesos each. I believe there was 10 to 12 individuals that were arrested. And I don't know, maybe these women were going to get the bail money. I'm not sure. Raymond continues, assassinated after they left the jail. They were part of a group that targeted store owners to pay protection money. From what the news says and what was said in the Negros Chronicle, they were here doing that credit card scam. And I guess one guy had over 100 fake IDs on him. And that was another issue, bailing them out. The police didn't know exactly who these guys were because there were so many IDs, so they wanted the birth certificates on these guys, the individuals that were arrested, before they would release them on bail. Delwyn Everson, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. Sorry, bud. Yeah, James A. Esom Jr. says, I know all global climate or warming is fake news. Yep, so I know what side you're on. We're all on sides. Larry Villanueva, Ned, have you ever been robbed or your house broken into? When we were moving down to Darwin, I left some boxes down there before we actually moved in, and somebody did come into the property, but that was my fault. It wasn't very secure at the time, and they stole a Nintendo and a hard drive, but they left a bunch of other stuff behind. So I guess it just was somebody in the area who really wanted a Nintendo Wii. Howard McCormack says, I live in San Carlos City, Negros Occidental, Philippines. I feel very safe here and just don't hear about the crime in the city. Okay, yeah, San Carlos is north of us. It's right on the coast. It's actually a very picturesque place. It's on the east coast of Negros. And a lot of times we don't hear about crime that's going on. Sometimes we forget how insulated we can be as foreigners in a foreign land. A lot of times we aren't connected or we aren't hooked into the local community network, the bamboo telegraph. A lot of times our significant others, our family members, don't want to recount all the stuff that's going on in the neighborhood because they're concerned that, it'll bring shame on the community, or that, we'll have second thoughts about staying here, that type of thing. So yeah, I got broken into once, but I lucked out. They only took, a Nintendo Wii and a hard drive. Yeah, Mike LaValle says, seriously, in Dumaguete, you really have to be looking for trouble to find it. I live there 3 months a year. I agree. I absolutely agree. And again, this is, if you're hanging out with bad people, if you're hanging out in bad places, bad things are going to happen. If you're hanging around in a barbershop, you're eventually going to get a haircut. It's just the way it is. RE counters, RE says, it don't matter where you live in the Philippines, you as a foreigner are always in danger of being killed and robbed. Yeah, but that's everywhere. And Thailand went through some crazy stuff not too long ago. And yeah, so Thailand's been having big issues. All right, I actually didn't write out this week's trivia. So if you want the first two people to answer this trivia question correctly, get a free copy of Chasing Your Philippine Dream, an Expat's Guide to the Philippines, a 450-plus page book on living, retiring, doing anything in the Philippines that myself and a couple other writers wrote over the course of a few years. And I didn't write down the trivia question, but I will say this. This guy is one of the first voices that I remember when I started watching professional wrestling. He recently passed away this past week at age 72. And he was basically the best heel, and a heel is the bad guy in a wrestling match, professional wrestling. He was the best heel commentator that I've ever heard. And again, it was my earliest memories of wrestling, listening to this gentleman do his commenting. And he was usually paired up with a guy named Gorilla Monsoon. And Gorilla Monsoon was the good guy, and this guy that we're talking about in the trivia question was the bad guy. If you can name this 72-year-old gentleman who just recently passed away, first two people to email the correct response to myphilippinedreams@gmail.com receive a free copy of my book. I know I don't have it written down here because I cut and paste this into my... God, I can't believe I did that. I hope I got backups. So that's basically it. I mean, in other news, we got crazy stuff going on all around the world. The Battle of Mindanao against insurgent ISIS forces is still straggling on in Mindanao. You got the Rocket Man up in North Korea still having fun playing with his growing arsenal of nuclear weapons, and God only knows what's happening in America. I try not to look so much. Time to get another pills and delivery. All right. And finally, before we wrap this mess up, I will most likely start doing a Friday morning Q&A / comment live stream on Friday mornings. Probably starting this week, probably at the same time here, 9 a.m. my time. So it'll be 9 p.m. the previous evening in Eastern Standard Time if you live on the East Coast of America. If you have questions you'd like to ask or are interested in seeing the cast, please subscribe to my Facebook page. The link is down in the video description box. I also want to talk James F. James F., if you're listening, thank you for sending that. He recently came back from Thailand, and he actually sent me a pretty comprehensive review of his time in Thailand, and that's one of the things that I'll try to be talking about on Friday morning. So thanks, James, for sending that in. I really appreciate it. Larry Villanueva says, just buy the book. It's very informative and a great guide that Ned and a few guys wrote. Well worth the $10. Thank you for that review. And as you can see, it wasn't actually me typing that fake review. Thank you for saying that, Larry. That was a lot of work. It continues to be a lot of work. I'm constantly trying to update it. I'm working on a different chapter right now as we speak, as a matter of fact. And it's $10, and it's basically a money-back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied. just shoot me an email, keep the book, and say, you know what, Ned, I'm disappointed with your book. I want my $10.95 back. Why does it rain so much? RE asks, why does it rain so much here in the Philippines? It's a tropical country. I'll tell you what, I actually enjoy the rain, mostly here on Negros, because Negros is actually one of the drier areas of the Philippines. It only typically rains at night a lot. So every night, I wake up because I got insomnia, so I wake up like every hour, every 2 hours. And you got the rain coming down, drumming gently against, well, not gently, but kind of loudly against the metal roof. It cools everything off. You don't have to use the air con as much. But it does make for rather high humidity levels. Right now it's 84 degrees Fahrenheit, 86% humidity. Casey Sewall says, love the Philippines. Oh, I lost you. Randy Carver asked, what was the trivia about the marks on the legs? Yeah, if you remember on a previous trivia question, I said nearly every Filipino has this skin discoloration on their leg. And after a while, foreigners who live in the Philippines or anywhere else get this on their legs as well. Yeah, it was muffler burns. I got mine, man. And if you guys have been following the channel for a while, you remember how nasty mine was. Because mine actually occurred, I parked the bike, shell was on the back, the bike went over. I tried to, instead of, when a bike goes down, when you're in a bike accident, you have to get away from the bike. That's the first thing you learn when you're riding motorcycles. If the bike's going down, get away from it. But I tried to stop it from falling, and it fell. The muffler fell right on my right leg, and it was just like a waffle iron pressed against flesh, and it was just sizzling, burning, and boy, did I get a nasty burn off that. It's faded quite a bit, but I still got my Thai tattoo. Raymond says, Philippine dreams, Ned, you cannot say Negros. You have to say African Americans. Okay, Raymond. That is an interesting combination, Negros Oriental. This is Sugar Island, and yes, there are a number of. This is one of the areas that was populated by a lot of Negritos, which were a shy tribe that still live in some areas, usually out in the forest, out in the jungle. They're sustenance farmers and hunters. Jeremy Parsons says the two girls were ATM hackers. They were part of the gang. Yes, allegedly they were associated with it and somehow. But if the police wanted to arrest them, why would they let them come visit the people that they had detained and then let them go back out? I'm not sure. I don't know. The full story's not in. Kelly, our friend of the channel, Kelly, up in Valencia, noted that all the facts aren't in yet. We don't know exactly what happened. Why did the assailants know, that maybe there was something in the bags that they took off the two victims? So all the information is not in. The thing to keep in mind, though, is with EJKs in the Philippines, it could be government people or it could just be civilians doing this. People taking the law into their own hands for a variety of reasons and not having to deal with the court system, which can be a little slow, a little convoluted, and sometimes a little unsatisfying, I guess. Yep. Raymond says Negritos are the Aboriginal tribe of Negros Island. Yeah, they're in a number of areas, and I've seen them twice, and they're very small, they're very short, and you don't miss them. And when you see one, it's like, oh, that's a Negrito. Jeremy Parsons. Okay, Jeremy Parsons is now he's now conducting an investigation, and he's naming who he thinks is the person that killed those two young women. Randy Carver correctly answered the trivia question. Craig Cameron actually answered the trivia question. And I'll tell you what, man. This guy was GOAT, greatest of all time, gets thrown around a lot. But as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to heel commentators, he was the best. He set the standard. He made you laugh. Some of the things that he came up with off the cuff, He was just so quick. He was so fast. He was so funny. He was a great manager. He was always, managing some of the biggest heels in WWF, WWE history. He was just a great, great guy. And he had some serious health issues. He had a stroke. I guess he also had cancer, and he lost a lot of weight from the cancer. The brain. Larry Villanueva says, Ned, would it be worth buying an inflatable boat with an outboard? Would I need to license a small craft? I have absolutely no answer for you. I do know that the tides here are pretty extreme, and a lot of times the coral is not that far beneath the surface of the water. That's why a lot of times you see the boats that they build here, they're very shallow draft. Even with the big giant pump boats, they have a relatively shallow draft, and they got the outriggers and all that. So I can't answer that because I don't have the experience. And I don't know if you have to license it. I would assume you do, but there's all kinds of things you're supposed to do and not do in the Philippines. And it seems to be, selectively enforced sometimes. Abraham Jaffa says, what's a good but cheap airline to take to the Philippines from Los Angeles? Again, I have no idea. You got to do a lot of searching. I have to go through that every year myself, getting my tickets, trying to find the best time frame. It takes a lot of work. You got to do a lot of digging. I usually try to go Asiana or Korean Airlines because I just really like them. They're very efficient. They're very nice. They feed you for the entire flight, and the food's pretty good. I also love the airport in South Korea. It's a wonderful airport. Little Sparrow 34 said wrestling is a violent sport. Mike Lavelli says Asiana has $519 right now from Chicago. That's not a bad price. Jeremy Parsons, Cathay Pacific is $590 round trip. I don't know, man. Cathay Pacific, $590 round trip. Yeah. Incheon, love Incheon myself, even though it's kind of close to that North Korean border. But again, since they got nukes now, it doesn't matter where you are in South Korea because they're going to blow up the whole thing. All right, everybody. I want to thank you for taking part in this live cast, for swinging on by. If you know the answers to the trivia questions, please email them to me. I'm sure I've got a couple of responses already. I was seeing some notifications popping up. Don't forget, I'm probably going to try to have a Q&A, just an open talk, something that I don't have to spend a lot of time preparing for on Friday morning. Go over to my Facebook page. The link is down in the video description box if you want to sign up. All you got to do is like our page, and then whenever I put up a new post, and I don't post a lot. I'm not one of these guys that is, posting up, hey, look, I'm having linguine with clam sauce, and I'm not posting 3 to 5 times a day. Sometimes I'm posting once a day. Sometimes I'm posting every other day. So you can click on that and get the updates on that. And thanks again to James F. for your report on Thailand. I really appreciate that. It was a very good report. And again, thanks to everybody for keeping it clean in the comments section. Nobody had to be banned thus far. And this is Ned over My Philippine Dreams. Until next time, everybody, amping, ingat, take care. Realize that 99% of the time the Philippines is absolutely wonderful. So keep that in mind when you're listening to this live cast and I'm talking about some of the bad things that are going on. Until next time, take care.